legends, and welcome to Unbeatable You, where we connect, thrive, and conquer. I'm your host, Brett Robbo, and I'm super grateful for your valuable time. So let's just dive straight in. Keep thriving and enjoy.
You look natural.
Thanks. Like this?
Yeah.
All right. We're good to go?
Rock and roll.
Jamin Heppell, you bloody legend. Welcome back to the show, my man.
Robbo, super stoked to be here, mate.
I say welcome back, but we have had a name change. You were one of the first on the show back in 2017 in the initial series. And here we are now with a name change to Unbeatable You, and it couldn't match, those philosophies couldn't match your lifestyle better, I reckon.
So good, mate. I mean, here we are 5 years later. The evolution, it's all part of the process. It's so good.
And the evolution of our relationship. So 5 years later, and we met last night for the very first time in person. It's crazy to think that, because the amount of times that we've connected over Zoom and dive deep, and you've coached in my groups and, you know, just caught up as friends, and the hundreds of voice messages that we've sent each other, I feel like we connect all the time. But to see each other and to hold each other in the flesh last night, it's super special. And even just your energy now, like you're actually sitting there without a screen between us, smiling at me.
So good, man. I mean, this is it. It's like it's a celebration of technology in a way, where like brotherhood can be created in this virtual way. But the truth is nothing quite is there to be celebrated like being able to get in the flesh and really affirm the brotherhood in reality.
And we were talking about it last night, and I spoke with Tully about it too, that ability to really connect straight away when there's a values alignment and that brotherhood, whether there's a screen there or not. So this is amazing, and that ability for us to create that friendship globally it's something special. And I think there's something to be said for that, of that knowingness of the vibe, the values alignment, the beliefs, the paradigms.
Absolutely. And, you know, when I sort of look at friendship and brotherhood is, you know, one of the key things I'm looking for is like, I love banter. Like I love the play. I love the shit talk. And yet for me, in a way, people need to earn the right to my shit talk. It's kind of like, if you're able to meet me at a depth of emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and spirit, then I know that you like a vulnerability is going to be welcome and safe inside the dynamic of that connection. And if a man is able to demonstrate that, I know that if we can go deep, we can go as high as we want to go. And so, you know, as we were sitting around dinner last night, I was just really present to that. It was like, yeah, each man here has earned the right to my shit talk, which enabled it to be just so rich and fun and, and beautifully connected.
I love that. And I actually said it to you as we were walking here, that special connection that we had last night I met all you guys for the first time, and there was that banter and that fun and that depth, and that dynamic play between it was awesome. And it made me reflect on relationships where there has been a lot of banter and not the depth, and that it wasn't met with emotional intelligence. And I say that without judgment, but just those relationships that I've grown away from over time because it hasn't felt right and doesn't align with who I am and who I want to be. It's not that I used to think, oh shit, maybe I shouldn't be doing banter. Maybe that's not the right thing to do. Like it just doesn't sit well with me, until I realized, it's the level of banter that's only surface level, that doesn't come with that depth of relationship.
Absolutely. And again, because it's all about, you know, banter from a place of depth, or when there's been the creation of depth and trust in relationship, like real trust, where it's like, yeah, this, you know, if shit's going down, this guy would have my back. Or if I'm struggling, I can trust that I could share this and it will land in a space of non-judgment. That there creates the kind of foundation where when we then move into the light shit talk banter, anything that comes, you know, it's coming from a place of pure jest and pure love. There's nothing threatening. There's nothing judgmental or competitive or penetrative about the communication. It's just pure. You know, it's fun. It's high vibe. And that's where it's like, when I talk about, men earning the right to my shit talk, it's like, show me that you can hold me. Show me that my vulnerability is safe in your hands. If you prove that, then let's go the full gamut from the bottom to the top and everything in between. But until you've demonstrated that you can hold me in my vulnerability and therefore hold your own emotional body in safety, you know, there's work to do, and the depth of connection just isn't going to be there in the way that's meaningful to me.
And I love when I see guys in workshops or retreats experience that for the first time and realize that that's available to them. And then in the same breath go, oh, but when I leave this environment, it's not available to me. It's like, cool. There's a level of awareness of getting to choose our environments and our communities without judgment against those people that can't hold that space, but just that awareness to what is actually available.
Absolutely. And then it's kind of like, well, once we get exposed to that and get in touch with that, well, all of a sudden it's like this kind of depth of relating and connection with other men is possible. And so then the question then becomes is, okay, well, if that feels something that's going to nourish me and have me become a better man, then the question then becomes, well, how do I cultivate more of this? How do I be consciously fostering friendships and a sense of brotherhood in a way that enables me to be more of my full self? Then it just comes down to the individual to be courageous enough to cultivate that for themselves.
Speaking of courageous to cultivate things for yourself, you live a life of epic adventure. You've created Mountains and Marathons business around that and take people on those epic adventures. You as an individual though, last time I spoke to you in a recorded chat, we've had so many unrecorded chats, but a recorded chat, you were coaching one of my men's groups in the mastermind, and you had just completed the Guinness World Record for the highest obstacle course race, wasn't it? And that's just kind of one epic experience that you have on the other side of the world. What's some just pretty out there kind of epic experiences you've had since then?
Yeah, well, to bring kind of listeners into the fuller picture, you know, I've been living nomadically and traveling the world for the last 5 years, including during COVID, which was quite a story in and of itself. But yeah, no, being a part of the Guinness World Records and the world's highest obstacle course race that was pretty up there. But the interesting thing to kind of like dovetail off the back of that adventure in Tanzania, because that was my 7th climb of Mt Kilimanjaro, which is a core part of Mountains and Marathons and what we do in our business. But that climb was with 40 athletes from around the world, some of whom were ex-special forces from the UK and the US. Some were gold medalists, some were world record holders. One woman holds a world record for the fastest average marathon, running a marathon in 7 continents in 7 days. World champion Spartan athletes. It was just the most inspiring and ridiculous crowd to climb a mountain with. And the thing about that, what I got to discover was how, I've ran ultra marathons across Madeira, across the island of Madeira, 85 kilometre ultra marathons, ran across Bali from Lavina to Seminyak, finished 9th in the Black Hills 50 mile ultra marathon in South Dakota. And and these guys just made all of these crazy, what I thought of crazy things. They just normalized the crap out of it. Just made it seem like a warm up. And so after this, after we're hanging off monkey bars and swinging on ropes in the crater of Mt Kilimanjaro, I was walking down the mountain on the final day because it was a 7-day adventure, and I was sharing about my vision of one day going up and down Mt Kilimanjaro in one day, which it normally takes 7 days to do. And as I was going down, I was sharing this with one of the other participants, and she goes, "Why don't you do it this weekend?" And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Yeah, you told me you just did a 50 miler 6 weeks ago. You've just spent a week and a half on this mountain. You're acclimatized. You've got everything you need. Why would you wait?" And I'm just like, and sure enough, by the time I got to the bottom of the mountain, I'd texted a local guide and said, "Hey, can you round up a few support crew to help me do this?" And dropped back down in the town of Moshi and dropped into a cafe. And sure enough, 3 days later, it was 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was standing at the bottom of the mountain again, ready to try and tackle the fight. It's 5,900 meters. Actually, 5,985 meters is how tall it is. And tackled that in one day. It took me 18 and a half hours. It took me 10 hours to get to the top. Admittedly, it was one of the most excruciating things I'd ever done. But when I reflect back on the play-by-play, it was just one of the most incredible experiences of my entire life.
How long did you spend at the top?
Enough time to eat 2 Snickers bars.
And then get the hell down,
And
so
then
you
get-
made it within 24 hours.
And then get the hell down. Yeah. I mean, I was doing okay for time, but it just became really fatiguing, particularly when I got to the a point. It was when it got dark and slippery on the way down, because also you got to remember just the nature of Kilimanjaro. I mean, it's a volcano. This thing goes up and it goes down. There's no undulation. There's no like, let's give the knees a rest and, you know, I'll get some sort of muscle recovery at the next down or up bit. It's like strictly up or strictly down. And so, you know, having spent 10 hours on the climb up and then 5 hours on the down, by the time I hit that, there was 13 kilometers to go, and it got dark and it got slippery, and that was just the most excruciating 5.5 hours of my life. The thing about that was, though, the only way down was to keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah. There was no like Iron Man, I'm just going to pull out, like I'm going to opt out. It's like if I opted out, the opt out is just to keep moving forwards. So I was inevitably going to do it, because fortunately I wasn't pushing the limit for 24 hours, because that was the video. The main thing was to do it in under 24 hours, but I managed to scramble my way in 18 and a half hours.
Well done. And marathon-wise, I saw that you ran a marathon. Was it Patagonia, where there's the scenery just looked amazing, but also it looked and sounded freaking challenging?
Yeah, man. So as far as the marathon game goes, so I think I've run about 35 marathons in different places around the world, of which I think 18 have been official, where I kind of got the medal at the end. The others have been just training runs in preparation for ultra marathons. But yeah, the marathon in Patagonia earlier or late last year was, I mean, it was an epic challenge because of the how much vertical gain, like vertical up and down, is required on that. And so originally I was planning on being a bit competitive, and then it just became about getting to the finish line. But similarly to like the Patagonia marathon, the Mont Blanc marathon in Chamonix, that's probably my favorite marathon in the world. That one's got, it's got 2,800 meters of vertical gain in it. It's literally just running up and down mountains for the course of, well, up to 10 hours. I think that's the cutoff. I managed to pull it off in 6, which was
6 hours for the marathon?
For the marathon.
With those peaks, wow.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it sounds like a really slow time for a marathon, but with that kind of vertical, it was a reasonable time. But the the winner, see, that my fastest marathon ever has been like 3 hours 25. But the winners of this Mont Blanc race, I did it in 6. I think they did it in like 3 hours and 5 minutes. Like, these guys are like the elite of the elite. I'm just a hobby. I'm just into it. It's just like a crazy psycho hobby. But, the elites, these guys are literally running up and down mountains as fast as I run on the flats. It is faster. It's outrageous.
It's awesome to show what the human potential is as well. I love seeing and hearing things like that. What about personal development journeys? Like, you've lived nomadic, like you said, for the last 5 years. Lived in Bali and all around the world. What are some either out there or... Actually, I'm going to have 2 frames to this question. What's the most out there personal development journey you've done? And what's the most transformational? Like, I'm talking about, if you're not sure about your plant medicine experience, breath work, whether it's just adventures with groups, what have been like the most out there and the most transformational for you personally?
I think the answer to those 2 questions probably lies in the same program. I mean, I could reference lots of different experiences, but the one that really comes to mind, which was very out there, and I think those 2 in a way can kind of go hand in hand. Like, the more out there it is, the more transformative it can be. It's like, because really the question is like, how much of an edge is it pushing up against? Like, how much of your current paradigm is being challenged inside of that space and that context? And so, I did a really profound men's only program in Granada in Spain in June 2020 to bring in. It was actually a birthday gift to myself. And the intention of this program was to challenge the deep-seated and deep-rooted layers of homophobia that exist in a man's psyche, predominantly based off of our cultural and societal conditioning. And so, in addition to that, depending on how familiar this language will be for your listeners, it was also about maturing our relationship with our inner feminine, which plays off this paradigm or this concept that in the human body, whether you're in a male body or a female body, we all possess the capacity, we all possess masculine energy and we all possess feminine energy. And where we kind of sit as a default is kind of like predisposed. So typically a man will find themselves more polarized in the masculine and a woman will find themselves more polarized in the feminine. But sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's the inverse, or any gender which you identify with, but we all kind of defaultly fall somewhere on this spectrum of like extreme masculinity, extreme femininity, and that's our default. And so part of one's journey of cultivating greater range and experience of being a human being and stepping into more of our fullest expression and fullest potential is looking at how can we cultivate range in the opposite side of that continuum. And so this program, it invited a deep excavation of our baseline layers of homophobia, and then it also was looking at how do we cultivate a deeper relationship with our own inner feminine. It was deeply healing. It was deeply revealing, and wild, man.
Why was it wild? You don't have to go into full detail, but
yeah, I mean, there's layers of like upholding confidentiality of like of ceremony and ritual, but a big part of it is like normalizing how to like being with other male bodies, and like specifically like let's say all men are in a space and none of us are wearing clothes, and then it's just like okay, we're naked. It doesn't mean anything beyond the fact that we're men being here naked. But the invitation, so let's say we're all standing in circle, right, naked, and then there's an invitation to like look at every man's cock. And so then it's like, okay, like we'll follow the cue, and, based on the context and everything that's been created here, it's a safe space, and the whole purpose of us being here is to like lean into these edges and notice moment by moment by moment what's coming up for us in our psyche. Like, is it, okay, like I'm looking at a man's cock and it's like, I shouldn't be doing that. This is weird. Like, what, is this okay? Just like noticing the thought loops that are going on as engaging in the activity. And because every time these thought loops come up, that there can be an invitation to go, where does that come from? Where does that come from? Or I'm noticing shame coming up. Or where's that shame coming from? I remember when I was like 5 years old. I can even relate to a story for myself. Like, being 5 years old and playing around as a kid and putting on my mum's nail polish, just like playing, right? Super innocent. And, and Dad come in and said, what are you doing? Like, and he started calling me Joanne for a week, and so it's like all of a sudden anything that's like, so nail polish became feminine, and feminine for a little boy, that became bad.
Yeah,
and so
that's the connotation.
That's the connotation, so then there's
imprint for you.
There's the imprint and there's the programming, and, and then there's all like the layers of like men play football, girls play netball, men wear these clothes, boys wear these clothes, girls wear these clothes. And so all of a sudden we're just kind of like programmed into this idea of what it means to be a man, and associating anything feminine as bad, or like not what it means to be a man. So then all of a sudden we're shutting off 50% of our human innate capacities and expression. And so, so circling back, it's like in those moments, like, okay, I'm engaging this activity inside an invitation to just have a look at what is showing up for me. Oh, okay, this is uncomfortable. Okay, if that's a little bit uncomfortable, can I just breathe? Okay, can I stay? What does it take to stay here? Breathe. Okay, drop this story about this meaning that you're gay. Okay, you're not gay, so just like let that go. And what if we just like be here and be inside and just notice what's going on somatically? Breathe, everything's cool, all good, and then take the next step from there. And so, I mean, that's an example of like one of the very baseline exercises. I mean, this is day one, right?
So I did ask for you the wildest one, and I'm sure that's not something you do regularly as a retreat like that. And in the same breath, how does that make you a better leader? Because you're a leadership coach and you lead some very high, how would I word that? You lead other leaders. You're a leader of leaders. You lead yourself. How does an experience like that make you a better leader?
So for me, it's all about personally, my personal growth, personal expansion is all about being able to be more comfortable in more context. And so it's about really finding experiences that stretch me and push my edges and challenge my thinking and challenge the paradigm that I have cultivated or the beliefs that I've cultivated growing up. I deliberately seek the most edgy and confronting situations to be able to expand my capacity to be with more. Therefore, when I'm in a coaching setting, in a one-on-one, someone's like divulging the deepest layers of shame that they experience and desire to be free from that shame. And maybe it's because they've had an affair and they're continually punishing themselves for having done that and still don't know why they did that fully. Or maybe it's a woman who is in their late 30s, early 40s and desires to have a kid, but doesn't yet have a man. And so just being able to meet someone inside of that, not necessarily saying that I have to have lived all of these experiences, but I just know that the more I'm like pushing my own somatic edges and challenging these beliefs, it enables me to be able to cultivate a degree of just to be able to be a deeper, more loving and safe presence for anyone who's in front of me, sharing whatever's alive for them, to be welcome and to be permitted, so we can then actually excavate any of the density that they're holding around stuff to then ultimately liberate the psyche, liberate the emotional body, and then give people access to deeper levels of peace and inner freedom.
So if we park your experience, the out there one that you were just sharing and what you went through, and then if we invite the thought around doing deeper work and expanding and us pushing our edges is a great way to experience what you just said and to develop our leadership. And we're all leaders, whether it doesn't matter if we're an employee, we're a self-leader and we're a leader in some capacity. And mothers that take time off work are incredible leaders in that environment where we're leaders in our businesses, we're leaders in our communities, we're leaders in our families. So there's different levels of leadership, and I believe that we can always expand in that kind of way. Two-part question here, is it vital for leaders to do a range of different personal development experiences to push those edges, to actually live, to embody their greatest potential in their leadership roles? Do you believe?
I mean, yeah, I'm a huge advocate of that. I mean, anything that's going to, from my standpoint, anything that's going to support us cultivating deeper levels of compassion and deeper levels of self-love and patience for oneself is going to be able to support any individual to be a better leader. Why? Because we're going to be able to show it with deeper levels of patience, deeper levels of empathy, deeper levels of compassion for anybody who's in front of us. So if we're stretching and looking at the layers of where we hold judgment and projections against others or push up against those edges of where we lack patience with ourselves or with other people, all of this gets to exist as an invitation of where there's more work to be done. And so finding these experiences and a range of different experiences is going to be continually looking at and shedding these layers of our own nervous system and our own psychology that can get in the way from deeper levels of love and compassion, which from my standpoint is exactly what's required in order to be able to bring out the best in others. If others feel safe in our presence, if others feel like whatever's going on for them is welcome, then we've got the capacity to put any personal challenge to the side because it's safely held, to then have people be able to tap into their genius. Whereas if people don't feel safe, if they don't feel seen, if they don't feel like what's going on for them is welcome, there's a suppression, there's a repression, there's shut down. And so hence why I'm such a big proponent of not just the diversity of these experiences that leaders should be or could be putting themselves into to stretch their edges and explore their own psychology and their own somatic body, is also deliberately cultivating the skills of a coach. The kind of work that we do. It's like this skill set is transferable into any layer of life or business, be that whether it's leadership in the family, just simply being able to sit and be and hold a non-judgmental space for somebody. That in itself can be just so healing and so transformative for anybody. And if that's done in the professional workplace, it's just amazing what kind of relationships can be cultivated when we're willing to sit with somebody and simply just hold what's alive and what's present. And then if we've got skills and tools or resources to be able to guide them to, fantastic. You know, otherwise it might be sending them into the loving hands of a professional. But like that, from my standpoint, is like the future of leadership and being able to create more loving communities, more loving families, more loving businesses. And I know this might sound kind of fairy, but holy shit, like when we're able to actually do this level of work where we can tackle our own inner shame and our own inner judgment and the guilt that we carry, and know the processes and tools to be able to release that and let that go, we get to live with so much more levity, creativity, empathy and compassion, and really call forth the best in others, you know.
So what I'm hearing you say is that desire to be a greater leader and more influential and more creative, and really stepping into that, is a byproduct of coming, like, in clearing the shit.
Doing the deeper work.
Doing the deeper work.
Absolutely. Like inside mountains marathons, you know, we have a very simple but effective curriculum and process that we guide anybody through. Clarity, clearing, creation. And it's all in service to people living in their inside deepest alignment, inside the deepest level of congruency with their truth. Clarity, clearing, creation. Clarity. Who am I and who do I want to be? What am I out to create in the world? Like, just really getting that down, getting that clear. Then we move into clearing. Clearing. This is clearing the shit. Like anything that is in the way, beliefs-wise, emotionally, unresolved past challenges, family dynamics. We want to go to work on all of that, because these are the things that are ultimately going to be getting in the way of whatever it is we're committed to being in the world. Like whoever it is that we're actually here to be. All of that programming, all of the unresolved stuff from the past, that's the shit that gets in the way of us actually having access to living into our fullest potential. So we want to clear that work, which, you know, a lot of that will happen inside of a diverse range of experiences, or leaning in with an edgy coach, or whatever it is. And then the third part is creation. And so then creation is really looking at the energetics and pragmatics of living and fully embodying this possibility that we've created inside of clarity. And so, you know, that when I talk about energetics, that's a big part there, is around how do we cultivate the somatic body, the emotional body, the nervous system, to be able to receive how good life can be, how good life can get. Because once we've cleared, all of a sudden we become a vessel of like whatever's in our deepest alignment is going to synchronistically begin to show up more and more inside our lived experience. And I've got so many examples of this from the last 5 years. But when we become this clear vessel, this clear channel, life keeps giving. And so then the practice then becomes is how much can we then receive? So that's the energetic side of it. And then pragmatically, it's like, then it's just getting really clear. Okay, well, what are the habits and the rituals and the rhythms, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, that's going to be consistently setting me up for pragmatically moving towards the person I'm really inspired to be and what I'm out to create in the world.
Brilliant. So much alignment, and we know this from being connected over the last 5 years through processes, and it just reminds me that working with humans is, you know, some commonalities around that, like the clearing aspect. Without clearing, we can't create and conquer. So we can create the image, but we can't create the reality of that without that clearing. Can you give me a practical example? Say if people are listening to this and they're like, oh, I kind of get what you're saying, and I'm just a chippy. Or I kind of get what you're saying, and I run a plumbing business, or something like that, and they've given themselves that label on that. But I want to be a better leader. How would it play out in the life of someone like that? Let's say a father of a tradie company.
Yeah, nice. I think first and foremost, the first place to start would be like taking the time to really consider who do I want to be and what do I want to create in the world. Like, to start with clarity. Just like as a possibility, putting aside what current reality looks like or who you think you are. Like, take a minute, notepad and pen, put on some epic, inspiring music, like emotionally inducing music that doesn't have any lyrics, and then just like sit for 30 minutes and allow your mind and your spirit to wander and get in touch with what might be possible. Not possible as far as like, how do I get there? But just like, what really sets your heart on fire? What feels expansive? And then write that down. And then my invitation there is to like spend time with that. Get more and more clear on it, because the more clear we are on that founding vision of like who we want to be, and the more that's like ingrained in our psyche, the more we're looking out for where we're being that and where we're not being that on the day to day. So that would be like the first pragmatic step, is actually like taking the time to write down the foundation of the vision. Then as far as like a first pragmatic step on the clearing side of things. Now, here's the thing. Clearing is not easy. Clearing is not, it's not fun.
It's not fun.
It's the bit like where we really have to have humility and be willing to have our depth of courage override our level of fear. Because this is the bit where we kind of go through some ego death. And, you know, and really if we're just going to look at like a baseline distinction to support anybody in discovering what it means and what it looks like to live into our full potential, is the distinction of integrity. And if we look at like the way that we define integrity, I sourced this from Landmark Education, which I think it's a really beautiful baseline of personal development work. Is integrity is honouring our word and clearing it up when we don't. Like, I make a promise to you, I fulfill on that. That works. You know, and we foster trust. If I don't follow through on that, that breaks down trust. And then there's something to clear and be responsible for. So then the question is how willing am I able to be responsible for when I don't follow through on my word? Because as human beings, we inevitably won't follow through on our word with some things. And so most humans aren't willing to take to take responsibility for the impact of when we don't follow through on what we say we're going to do. In addition to that, if we look at it as far as like giving my word to myself, when I say I'm going to do something for me and I do it, I would consider that to be a profound act of self-love, and one that fosters trust and one that fosters confidence, one that improves our mental health and our overall sense of well-being. When I make a commitment to myself and I don't follow through on that, well, it diminishes all of those things. It makes me smaller. It makes me less trusting of myself, increases my anxiety and less desiring to take on greater levels of responsibility.
Can you give me an example of when that happens in your life?
Like now?
Or has happened?
Yeah, I mean, classic example would be like fitness and nutrition. It's like as soon as things get a bit stressful, like I've got a commitment to like honouring my body as a temple, right? And then there are like when things get a bit hectic in my world, like good nutrition is like the first thing to go. And so, you know, and then I'll get to the end of the day and I won't feel my most fullest and empowered self because I'll have like, you know, just not had a good day on the diet front. And so inside of that, it's like, yeah, I lose trust in myself when I have days like that. And so then the question becomes, okay, well, how am I going to restore this for myself? But then the part here is about not making integrity moral, right? Where it's like good, bad, right, wrong, where there's like judgment associated with it. Because it's pretty easy to get to the end of a day and I've had shit nutrition when I've got a commitment to myself for like honouring good nutrition and I don't. It's pretty easy to be like, shame on you, Jamin. You know, you're idiot, you're hopeless. Like, you know, you should know better. You can have all of that kind of narrative going on, which is very moral. Like there's right, wrong, good, bad. Versus just being able to be like, okay, shit day of nutrition. That's not what I'm committed to. Okay, how am I going to respond from this place? Cool. I'm going to take a moment right now just to have a look at what I'm setting myself up for tomorrow and looking at what it's going to take to have a good day of nutrition tomorrow. Do the thing, set yourself up, execute.
Drop the judgment.
Just drop the judgment. You know, notice how clean that is, right? Or it's even like, you know, even just another example is like, you know, I think a good one with integrity is always like people's relationship with time. You know, it's like we say we're going to meet at 3 p.m. and cool, if both people arrive like at 3 p.m. or just before, that works. Okay, but, you know, let's say someone's going to be a couple of minutes late or 5 minutes late. The honourable thing to do would be to be in communication and upfront and be like, hey, I'm going to be a couple of minutes late. And so then the agreement has shifted. It might still have an impact, but at least the agreement has shifted. So then we can be somewhat responsible. But it's when people, you know, say 3 o'clock and they roll in at 10 past and then walk into the room and just do the old like, sorry, I'm late. And then sit down. It's like there's been no responsibility for the impact of being late. And like the impact is multi-layered on this front. I know it's like simple because we're talking about time, but if we really want to get real about it, you know, potential impact of like being 10 minutes late is like, let's say you've been late before. Now there's a pattern And so anyone in that room is now going to be relating to that person as a late person, right? That's an impact. The other impact is whatever, like 10 minutes late into the meeting, it's like we're not going to be able to be as productive or as effective. We're not going to have the same level of like energetic enthusiasm towards what we're doing because there's been a disruption to our start time. Like, there's all these kind of these like energetic layers of impact. And so, often people come in just like, hey, sorry, I'm late, sit down, and then like, let's get on with it. But like a profound way to like clear that and come back into integrity would be to walk in the room and be like, hey guys, sorry I'm late. Regardless of why I'm late, I just want to acknowledge that this doesn't really work and it's gotten in the way of 10 minutes of our creative energy, and it's also I'm just not committed to being a late person, so I'm sorry. Is there anything that anyone else wants to say? No? Cool. Alrighty, moving forward, I'll make sure that I set myself up so I'm not going to be late next time. Boom. Let's sit down and then get on with it.
And with patterning too, I'd ask the question when I hear things like that, there's the time example, it's anything, and you say, where else is that showing up in your life? So it might not necessarily be that I'm always late to things, but you're just not committed to the process. So where else is that showing up in your life? Oh yeah, I thought I was going to follow through with those nutrition goals, but I just haven't fully committed to that. Haven't fully committed to the relationship agreements or whatever it might be. So it's not just about, I'm a late person. It's like, I'm not committed to the process.
Bingo.
I've got to be careful saying that too, because I'm often late because I'm like, I'll squeeze everything I can, and then I'm like optimistic it's going to take 9.5 minutes, but it took 10.5, and
it's good. So it's good because then it's about noticing your patterns. Like you notice your pattern, and you're like, okay, I've got a predisposition for doing that. So then it's like, okay, what are the system structures, habits that I need to put in place to mitigate the likelihood of me doing that? Even for me, just around time, like there was a chat. There was like throughout most of my 20s, my family would like literally be like, Jamin lunch starts at 1:00 when it actually starts at 2.
So you're there on time.
So I'm there on time, right? And so they related to me as a super late person. And so then there was a point when I actually got in touch with the impact of my being lateness, that I made a wholehearted commitment, or when I actually got in touch with integrity and how powerful it is to be a man of our word or to be a person of our word, and really looking at what does that actually take. That was when I was like, okay, I'm committing myself to being an on-time person, and then confronting whatever layers exist inside of my conditioning or the paradigms that I've created to discover what it takes to actually be an on-time person.
If we park time on this, I think a common example might be when people commit and say, yes, yep, I can do that for you. I'll get that to you. I can do that for you. I can get that to you. Oh, sorry, I just didn't get around to. Oh, sorry. And that pattern, I think, shows up a lot with people too. So, that awareness of, well, where else is that showing up, or why? What's beneath that pattern? Is that because you're a yes person, or is that because there's something beneath that of you having a fear to actually say to people, no, I can't do that. Or I'm sorry, I'd love to do that for you, and I can't at the moment.
Absolutely. Again, it's a beautiful experiment. It's like having a look at what we actually commit ourselves to, and then noticing if you have a propensity to say yes and overcommit, and then noticing the impact of that and the impact of like the not follow through. It's simple, but a very profound thing for someone to go through, because you might discover you're a super people pleaser. Or you might already know that, but you haven't done anything about it. But if we're actually willing to have a look at what it means to be a person of our word and have integrity, the kinds of transformation that's available as far as our mental health, as far as our level of leadership capabilities, as far as the depth of responsibility we're willing to take on, like the more we're able to relate to ourselves as a person of our word and have the capacity to clear it up when we don't, like it develops a deep level of trust with self and with others. And so now if we circle it back to the journey of like clarity and clearing, inside of clarity, that vision from my standpoint is a declaration of who we're committed to being. It's like, I've got my word in that. And so then inside of clearing, it's like, okay, well, anything that's not congruent with that, we want to be having a look at, because this is who I declare myself to be. And so as a man of my word, I'm going to go to work on anything that isn't that. And so I'm going to be looking at all of my layers of insecurities. I'll be looking at where, and even just another simple exercise that people can do is like write down what I call a dead weight list. So a dead weight list is writing down everything that you can recall that is an unfinished, incomplete project or assignment where the due date has already passed. And so this could be like having been meaning to clean up the garage for the last 12 months. You know,
Right.
it could have been meaning to take my, you know, it might have been a commitment to someone else. It might just be a commitment to yourself, been meaning to take my partner on a date. You know, been meaning to go and have a kick of the footy with my kids. But like you'd made a commitment at some point, and if you haven't cleared it up, shifted the agreement, or actually done it, it would be considered, you know, dead weight.
Weight.
And so if we look at dead weight, like it's like spiritual dead weight. This is the psychological baggage that we just carry around, and that lives as stress inside the body. And so we don't have, there's like, we either relate to ourselves as just people that are just like chaotic and haven't got our shit together, and that's just who I am and how I am. And so we just use that as a bit of a bypass excuse. Or we just become people who aren't willing to take on greater levels, take on more things, and become kind of sheepish and small in life because we're already carrying this level of anxiety that exists in our system.
Wow.
Because of all this incomplete shit. So like one of the first things in the Aligned Leadership Program with Mountains and Marathons is we like get people to write out the dead weight list. And we're like, guys, this is a 6-month program. You got 6 months to clean this list up. If you need support, let us know. Otherwise, by the time we meet in Tanzania and climb Mt Kilimanjaro or Everest Base Camp or Outback Australian Marathon, whatever we're doing, by the time we meet for that retreat, make sure that list is done, because we don't want you carrying any of that dead weight up the mountain or carrying it along the marathon.
Love that. What are some of the most common dead weight examples that you see?
Oh mate, it's like clean the garage. It's like finish the house landscaping. It's the I owe Robbo $1,000, you know, but he said pay me back like sometime in the next 12 months. But there's no like actual agreement around it. It's the breathwork course that you bought and committed to doing but never got finished. It's like it's organising the dinner with your brother and sister that, you know, you promised that you'd do at Christmas time but didn't get round to. You know, it's like
yeah. So even things like, we should catch up again. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, why don't let's commit to that. Let's make a time. Let's do that. And so then all of a sudden that's on the back of your mind or the front of your mind at different times, and that becomes dead weight. And then there's the big things like the unfinished projects, like you said. And then there would be the emotional connections of expanding the quality time with your partner or your kids or your self-care.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think the good example you gave just then too is just like the flippant, hey, yeah, let's make sure we catch up like sometime. Well, then we might write that down, but then one of the questions that we'll invite our members to consider is like, how committed are you to that? Like, is it actually important? Or do you just want to let it go?
Yeah, because you don't have to honour it just because you said it.
No, you can create a new agreement.
Yeah.
But it's not about being flippant with the new agreement. It's really tuning in, going, is this important to me? And then it's like yes, like something in my being will feel incomplete if that's not done. And so then that's the litmus test for like, yep, do we follow through? Do we then like set up the structures to make sure that happens? Or do we just go, yeah, I said I'd catch up with that person like 6 months ago and it still sits there on the to-do list. I'm going to let that one go. So we can kind of give ourselves a bit of grace, because otherwise we're going to have it like we're going to have a
the list to be just massive.
The list is just a mile deep, you know.
It's not the point.
That's right. It's not the point. It's about really tuning into what are the incomplete things that actually hold gravity and exist as like spiritual dead weight, and then completing that list is one of the most fulfilling experiences. It's spiritually liberating, because you know oneself to be in integrity. It's like being out of debt. You know, there's a freedom that comes with that, and therefore a willingness to take on greater levels of responsibility.
I've done this process without knowing that I've done this process, and at the same time, I'm creating this dead weight list in my mind right now. So thank you, because I've got these things that I'm actually excited about, because you've allowed me to identify, because this is what I know to be true, is that we carry this energy with us without even knowing, and this is part of that clearing process. Like, where is your energy blockages, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually? So thank you for identifying that. I'm going to create my dead weight list, and we're going to knock it over before the middle of the year with some of the big things on there.
Do it, mate. Now you've given your word to that. So
exactly. And that's why I don't say that lightly, because some of the shit on my dead weight list, is big.
Yeah.
And the longer I leave it there, the bigger it gets, the heavier it gets.
The heavier, denser it is, exactly.
I've got some adventures coming up and I don't want to carry that dead weight with me.
Oh, awesome.
And I like what you said there about creating the new agreement, and it kind of like flipping back to what you were saying there about integrity too. So we make our word and we commit to certain things, so to live in integrity, and then sometimes it doesn't happen. For whatever reason, we don't follow through with that. So we take that radical responsibility, we acknowledge that, and we shift through that, as opposed to, because that then can be something that becomes a dead weight, right?
Totally.
So the dead weight list can actually be dissolved as we shift through those experiences.
Absolutely. Which I think it plays into a really important piece of one of the key skill sets that people need to be able to cultivate to do this work very powerfully is about having, not relating into it as moral, like right or wrong, like I'm a bad person because I didn't follow through, or I'm a good person because I followed through. It's actually like, integrity or honoring our word. It's just black or white. It just is what it is. It's reality. I'm late or I'm early. Like I followed through. I was at the dinner or I wasn't. I caught up with my kids or I didn't. I paid the money back or I didn't. It's like let's just get in touch with reality about it and not make it dramatic about it being good, bad, right or wrong. So that's a massive paradigm shift for a lot of people, is just simply being able to engage with it from a place of reality. The second place then is then being able to cultivate compassion for oneself. So it's like, I didn't follow through on the thing. And then being able to be both looking at, again, where wasn't I responsible for following through on the thing? And concurrently, can I have compassion for the fact that I am a human being? I'm not a robot and I'm not always going to get it right.
Acceptance.
And that's right. And so then ultimately, if we look at it, it's like compassion, acceptance, forgiveness. Okay, forgiveness, not as a cop-out, but forgiveness from a place of okay, I feel complete with the fact that I didn't follow through on that. And now I'm coming back to my word and recommitting. And that as a spiritual process of being able to continually come back to nothing, supports us to then always be creating from a neutral, clear playing ground and not a whole bunch of guilt or shame laden on top of one another. As you were speaking earlier, so many people kind of step into the personal development space and get into the whole positive thinking realm of, or just moving into everything's all love and light. And it's well, my relationship with that, a mentor of mine once said, he said, that's like putting icing on a piece of shit. It looks good and it smells good, but underneath it's just nothing. And that's where, if we talk about real clearing, that's the deeper work that actually creates a strong backbone for them people to be able to dance in life and navigate the storm, because, we've done that deep inner clearing work to be able to ride it when it gets tough, but then also continually come back to being in the mode of creator when we're not riding a storm.
What are some of the most common storms that leaders are navigating and riding when they start to work with you in the Mountains and Marathons program or in one-on-one? Because you work with a range of different leaders, and we talked about leadership before and your purpose of leadership. What are some of the common storms, the common challenges that most leaders face, and maybe they don't know that it's common?
Yeah, man, it's super common, and it's relationships
with self, with others.
With others, I mean, relationship with self. That's an endless that's an endless journey of unfolding ebbs and flows. But relationship with others, and particularly family. Yeah, family dynamics is the one consistently. Because I'm working with these high performing leaders, and we're talking about leaders in a corporate environment, a corporate workplace, or the founder CEOs of big startup companies. But it's the human stuff. It's the disconnect from mum and dad. It's the haven't spoken to my brother in 5 years. It's the kids aren't talking to me. It's the best friend that I haven't, that we've got, there's tension between the relationship with me and my old best friend. It's those things. And so this is again, next kind of, we look at dead weight, but the next thing we look at is relationship clearing and looking at, okay, where is there something in the space where I have inhibited freedom where I have inhibited self-expression with certain individuals. And then we want to look at each of those relationships and then what's at the source of whatever's in the space, and then be in a process of clearing that so that we can ultimately be powerful and have full self-expression and freedom, no matter which person is standing in front of us. And hence why family is always the big one, because there are so many people that can be powerful in so many range of contexts, but then put them in front of their dad, and then all of a sudden they become a little boy again.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. And so this work, though, it's a worthy inquiry within oneself, but it is the kind of thing that's helpful to have professional guidance to support with that process of becoming clear within oneself, and then discerning if it's appropriate to be in a clearing conversation, and then developing the skill set of being effective in a clearing conversation so that we're able to, work through things with people in a non-violent communicatory way, so that we ultimately get the result of respect and love that we're all seeking. I think it's helpful to have professional guidance around that, but even for each individual who's tuning in here, it's meaningful inquiry, looking at who are the individuals in my life where there is, like, when I close my eyes and I feel into the energy of frustration, resentment, drama, guilt, shame, lies, withheld truth, any of these layers, who shows up in my field? And often it'll be family, often it'll be close friends, sometimes it'll be work colleagues. And it's interesting to look at, if we think again of just the concept of dead weight, of like dense energy that we carry, when there is a lack of freedom in these relationships, that gets in the way of us being our fullest, most loving, expressed self. And so where I see the biggest challenges that people face, it's in these domains, and yet who people get to become on the other side of that is profoundly liberated and in touch with not just the sensation of that liberation, but also the skill set that's required to be someone who's willing to do the inner work and look at, why is there so much resistance here? Why is there so much drama here? Not from a place of if they change, then my life will change, but going, where am I responsible for the tension or the breakdown here? What can I be accountable to? And then being able to really hold that mirror up and come to a place where we can go, okay, if I'm creator of every layer of the entirety of my life experience. Where am I responsible for the quality of this relationship? And then if we're able and willing to do that work, well, ultimately then it creates the space for all new kinds of possibilities to emerge inside that friendship or relationship, because where there's enough humility there to go, hey, I don't need you to change, but here's what I want to be responsible for. Here's what I can be responsible for, the dissonance that's between us right now. And I've seen over the years, just seen some absolutely profound breakthroughs of, members not having spoken with mum for 10 years and getting back in contact and sitting down for 3 hours and going the full gamut and creating all new kinds of possibilities for the future of their relationship. Or, kids that are disconnected and dad through persistently being willing to take responsibility for every layer of where he might have fucked up in his fatherhood, and is being projected upon by his kids, and being willing to actually own that and take responsibility for it, and creating a safe space for them to share openly about it. These are the kinds of skills and ways of being that, from my standpoint, transform leadership, but in this case, leadership inside family. And it's profound.
So great. And the connection between, I was talking with Tully about this, the quality of life and the extension of longevity of a quality life through connected relationships. So having great human relationships is directly correlated to having a greater quality of life. And so it makes sense that that's kind of dead weight when we're holding on to or carrying in some sort of way that disconnect in those relationships. So again, understand it's not just about, with mum and then thriving and it's so beautiful. How does that add to your vitality as a human being? And then how do you carry that vitality into your other relationships, into your business, into all areas of your life?
100%. And just speaking to everybody, if you're able to deal with your family stuff, if you can navigate your family stuff and heal family stuff, you can heal anything. Because that's the deeper, the family's as deep as it gets, that's all the mum and dad, all the layers of mum and dad, and where they weren't the best parents, and where they, abused me, or where they, abandoned me, or if you're able to really go to work on that stuff and come to a place of forgiveness with mum and dad and brothers, and other family members, like, and be really willing to feel it and be in those kinds of conversations, that has people grow up and mature very, very fast, and therefore be so much more dynamic in all the other relationships in life.
How much of your work in mountains and marathons or your individual coaching does it just completely blow people away? How often do you get this feedback of, oh shit, I wasn't expecting this? When they come in to improve their leadership and there's the big shiny run a marathon or climb a mountain, and then you take them through this kind of journey.
Yeah. Like nearly everybody. Like we have that. Like we have that, and the thing is we've never had somebody quit. We've had people run away for a month. But we've never had anybody quit. Because the truth is like when people are in it, it's like they know, as confronting as it may be, they know it's medicine. They know, like, deep down, like, even their psyche, their ego is like, get the fuck out of here. This is way too hard, way too confronting. Eject, abort, I'm out. Which is just some form of childhood programming of like how it's a survival mechanism to get away from the pain. But deep down, like, everyone knows that this is the medicine for their soul. And so, and obviously we'll be a stand for them as well, because we know that. And so welcome them back graciously, lovingly, compassionately, and now get your ass back in shape and get back to work.
In similar kind of context and looking at evolution, what are some recent belief systems that you've shifted in the last, let's say, couple of years or a few years?
Yeah, if we're really going to go there, it would be my relationship with spirit. Yeah. Like, I grew up atheist, and and I've never really, I've never engaged with this idea of like there is a God. But when I made a commitment 6 years ago to live in deep alignment, and that was the point when we were first in the podcast and talking about the man cave and the evolution of the creation of mountains and marathons. Like, that was the point in time where it was just like a wholehearted, unquestionably deep commitment to like living in my deepest truth and my deepest alignment. And, just being on a lifelong commitment to that. And noticing that the more I stepped into the work of clearing in particular, having deep clarity on what an aligned life would be for me, but leaning more and more headfirst into the work of clearing and healing and dissolving disempowering paradigms, I just started to notice just crazy synchronicities that would play out in my life. Like, even I remember one moment, me and Jenny, my business partner, we were the business was struggling a little. We were actually, like, it was early days, and we hardly had any traction. No one knew who we were. Our marketing, we still hadn't cracked our marketing yet. And we're really struggling to sell spots for the Two Oceans Marathon Aligned Leadership Program in Cape Town, South Africa. And we're in Mendoza, one of your favourite places where you grow the Malbec. I know this. Yeah. And we flew from Mendoza to Buenos Aires in Argentina on our way to Germany because we needed free accommodation at Jenny's parents' place because we were so low on cash flow. And anyhow, so we'd made the call to make this move as we'd been living in this beautiful place for like a month doing a house sit again, like trying to save money, but the internet there was so bad that I wasn't able to sustain an enrollment conversation for like...
I remember this. We had a call with you in that place.
Yes, that's right. And it was probably the patchiest podcast you've ever recorded.
No, it was just a chat. It wasn't a recording. So, okay. So it was forgiven.
Probably good. And then, I'm on this like 2-hour flight from Mendoza to Buenos Aires, and there was a woman sitting next to me wearing this hat and reading this book, and I knew she spoke English because the book was English, but we didn't have any engagement. And then we made a transfer from one of the Buenos Aires airport to the other one to then catch our international flight over to Germany. And anyway, so when we got to this other airport, I rolled into this like French patisserie joint, and Jen and I wanted to get some work done, so we plugged in the computers, and then 2 hours later we were ready to leave to go and catch our flight, and the charger was next to this woman. And she looked familiar. I was like, I think that was the woman who was sitting next to me on the plane. And so I just said, hey, would you mind grabbing my charger there? And she grabs it. I said, thanks. And I said, what are you up to? And she said, oh, I've just been on a 4-week kind of soul-searching sabbatical around South America, and I'm just heading back home to San Francisco. And I'm like, cool. She's like, what do you do? And then Jen stood up and gave the 30-second elevator pitch of, we run this program and you run a marathon. And she's like, oh my God, I think this is exactly what I'm looking for. Can I have a card? And so sure enough, gave her a card. And then by the time we landed in Germany, she'd already made an inquiry. And within 3 hours of me landing in Germany at midnight, I jumped on a sales call, and this woman was our first person to register and sign up. And, I just look at that and just you just couldn't script the becoming of that, and then it turns out she was a director at Uber. And so the kinds of network, the connections that relationship then opened up, and referrals and whatnot, it was like a gateway into part of the evolution and creation of mountains and marathons and the caliber and the kinds of leaders who we get to work with. And I just look at that, well, sure, from an atheist standpoint, you can just look at this plus this plus this plus this equals this. We could map it back. But there are just so many moments of even just another example is so Jenny and I went through a really beautiful and powerful and challenging journey of separating romantically 2.5 years ago. We're in Bali during COVID, which is that in itself was another crazy synchronicity, because Bali was one of the most abundant places in the world to be during COVID. But Jenny and I had been through months and months and months of determining what the future of our relationship would be. And then at one point Jenny got clear, and she walked into the villa, and she said to me, Jamin, I need more from you. And I said, Jen, I get it. It's a bold request, and I get it, but I can't give you that. And so then in that moment, and there's obviously a lot of backstory as to why I couldn't give her that, but we both acknowledged in that moment that we'd be separating. And what was interesting up until that point was how deeply aligned my life had felt in every area of my life, except my romantic relationship. And so, after we held one another and cried for 15 to 20 minutes in one another's arms, and then made the transition of her living in a different villa and whatnot. But I just remember in that, the following days, I was like, whoa, now that this layer of my life has been cleared, what's coming? What has this created space for that the universe hasn't been able to give me?
Dead weight, right?
Dead weight, big time. Exactly. And so from this place, Jenny and I then got back together a couple of days later and tuned in to determine the future of the business. And that was when we both shared our vision. And I said, look, I'm committed to, I've got the vision of us being best friends and business partners. And I think what we've created here is remarkable, and we don't need to let this go. But that takes two. And then Jen said, I've been thinking exactly the same thing. And so from there, we looked at each other and we were like, all right, well, what does it look like to have the most inspiring separation the world has ever seen? That was the vision that we created. Anyway, fast forward 3 weeks, we're having our conscious uncoupling retreat. We're at our favourite cafe in Bali, and we're sitting down. These 2 little kids start mucking around with us. And a woman comes over and says, hey, sorry about my kids. And she goes, oh, what are you doing? And we didn't give her the full story, which is having breakfast at our favourite cafe. And then she goes, my name's Eri, what's your name? And I said, my name's Jamin. She goes, say it again. I was like, my name's Jamin. She's like, no, one more time. And I'm like, my name is Jamin. And then this guy on the other side of the room stands up and he goes, I'm Jamin. And it was the first time I'd ever met another Jamin. This guy, author, speaker, coach, profound leader, father, we got connected, and then within a week he was my coach, and then he introduced me the entire world, the entire eclectic world of Bali, and my entire community opened up. And so I just look at even layers of that, Jenny and I choosing to separate, just happened to be at this cafe, happened to meet my next mentor who I co-journeyed with for the next 6 months, who opened up whole new layers of my world and my personal growth and development. Yeah, it's my relationship with spirit. It's it's a co-creation. It's there is a creator, I'm a creator, and we are in partnership. And whether it's fate or there's a divine path that's already been laid out, I can't say that for certain, but I'm trusting the breadcrumbs. And I notice that the more that I choose to clear and then take the actions that feel most congruent and most expansive in my system and light me up the most, the universe is consistently giving me signs that you're on the right path. Yeah.
I'm hearing you and I'm feeling you. And we've had recent experiences actually in similar, deeper context with different external kind of context. But that saying I actually said to my gorgeous wife just recently when we'd been moving through a lot of shit, and we'd been nudged out of alignment a bit and we hadn't done as much clearing. And then all of a sudden we had the opportunity to do that, and just said, just remember, like, we trust the process. And when we live in alignment, we attract amazing people and amazing opportunities. And that's kind of the surface level, an easy way for people to relate to that with the depth of what you just brought to it, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, principally, be clear. Like, do the work to be clear. And so as we become an energetic vessel for like what the universe actually wants to give us to show up. Otherwise, there's just too much stuff in the space that you know, the whatever is actually here for us, we get in the way, like, it all gets in the way of that.
And so fast forwarding that experience of the conscious uncoupling of your romantic relationship but maintaining this strong business relationship, where is Mountains and Marathons now as we wrap up and we tie a bow in this amazing chat that we could actually sit in for many, many hours? But where is Mountains and Marathons at now in its evolution for people listening who think, sounds awesome, take me on that journey?
Yeah, I mean, if people are going, sounds awesome, like ready to clear my shit.
Some people are going, whoa, that's right, man. I've seen too much.
And I mean, that's also part of it too. Is it's just like, it's about there is something for everybody as far as being able to meet you where you're at and what you're willing to lean into. And yeah, the fact is the Aligned Leadership Program, it's intense, but it's also why we get the results that we get. Because it goes, we don't hold back. And so, as far as like, where Mountains and Marathons is at now, I think the growth and expansion of me and Jenny as individuals and as a team is reflective of kind of the growth of Mountains and Marathons. And so where we're at now, I think we're up to our 15th edition of the Aligned Leadership Program across the course of the last 5 years. Having run programs in Mt Kilimanjaro in Tanzania and Mount Everest Base Camp in Nepal and Cape Town, South Africa, Honolulu, San Francisco, Patagonia, Chamonix in France, Bahamas. Yeah, some really, really incredible places. We even ran our first level 2 program called Masterpiece in Iceland late last year. So things just the nature of the adventure and exploration just continues to open up in really meaningful ways. And so, yeah, this year where we're at is it's an exciting stage of growth and invitation for new leaders to join our community. So we're in the process, we're in the lead up to our Outback Australia Marathon Aligned Leadership Program.
Brilliant. When's that happening?
And so this one, it kicks off on the 24th, 25th of January, 24th, 25th of February, so next month. And it will be ran, the actual marathon itself is in late July of this year. So that'll be the 6-month journey. And then the one after that is Mt Kilimanjaro, which goes from May until October of this year.
Brilliant. And I don't need to ask the question of what people can expect, because I think we've exposed plenty of that. But where can people find out more information? Where can they follow the journey and get curious and inquire about what Mountains and Marathons entails?
Yeah, nice. So
even for your personal coaching.
Yeah, sure. So I think across the classic socials, so if we're talking about Mountains and Marathons, you'll get us on Instagram at Mountains and Marathons. Follow us on Facebook. You can even join our Living Aligned free community Facebook group, which is a place where you can get more in touch with me and Jen, where we're constantly offering 5-minute nuggets of leadership and useful distinctions for being able to navigate a more aligned life. So we welcome anyone into the Living Aligned Facebook group. And then for me personally, Instagram at Jamin Heppell, Facebook Jamin Heppell, and then the website for all of it is mountainsandmarathons.world.
Brilliant. We'll link all that up in the show notes too. So as we do wrap up, as I said, we could have spoken for many, many hours. I feel like we scraped the surface and also got deep at the same time. But is there anything that you would like to leave the listeners with? Any words of wisdom to help them live their unbeatable life?
Yeah, I think the key thing is if you are experiencing any sense of stuckness or trappedness, there is a way. Like, there is a way to a more expansive and a freer experience of being alive. And even if that may just seem conceptual, there is a way. And my invitation for people to start with is like, start with clarity. Start with what you actually want. And then the next step is then beginning your own journey, be that with Mountains and Marathons, Robbo, or, Unbeatable You, or somebody else to support you in the journey of clearing. As that's when we really start to get in touch with deeper truth and create meaningful transformation in our life.
Beautiful. Jamin, you're a legend. I want to acknowledge you for your deep-seated trust and belief in yourself, and then the way that you let that ripple into not just the work that you do, but the being that you are and the energy that you bring. I'm inspired by not just the awesome, eclectic, nomadic lifestyle you live, but your genuine authenticity and your integrity and the way that you show up and what you bring to the table consistently. Consistently is a word that shows up with that. So thank you and keep shining your abundant light to the world, my man.
Thanks for seeing me, Robbo. Yeah, appreciate you, man. You do good work, brother. And also present to the depth of courage that you constantly channel and access to do what you do and be who you be. And I witness like the relationship that you've cultivated with your wife and who you show up as father and then how you lead business and all of the layers, that ain't fucking easy, man. And I see you leading the way, and I see you leading with vulnerability, not shying away from the stuff that needs clearing, because as we both know, like the juice is like the integration on the other side of that. And I just see you as someone who consistently is willing to be in the mess to get the gold and then continue to grow and be the leader that you're here to be. Yeah, I love you, man.
Love you right back, and I super appreciate that. Thank you, my man. Boom.
Boom.
There you go, another empowering episode, and thanks again for tuning in. Make sure you check out the show notes for any extra links or information that we spoke about in this episode. Don't forget you can now catch the Unbeatable You podcast on the YouTube channel, Brett Robbo Coach. If you want info and inspiration straight into your inbox on how to live an unbeatable life, you can sign up to receive weekly insights and actionable steps for optimal performance and thriving in every aspect of your life, plus first release offers on Unbeatable You courses and live events. Don't worry, there's no spam, just short, punchy, value-giving emails straight to you. Simply go to brettrobbo.com/community. If you find value in this podcast, don't forget to share it around with your mates and subscribe, rate, and review. It really supports the podcast mission massively. If you want to reach out to me personally, you can connect with me at Brett Robbo Coach on social media, and that's where you can let me know who you want to hear on the show. Keep thriving, legends, and as always, remember, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? This is your opportunity to live your unbeatable life.